What would it take to make you satisfied with life? And I don't mean a kind of brief, oh, that was nice, satisfied. I mean a lasting, void-filling satisfaction that doesn't depend on your circumstances. C.S. Lewis, philosopher, theologian, author of great children's stories, he hits the nail on the head with this, I think. He writes, most people, if they really learn how to look into their own hearts, would know that they do want, and want acutely, something that cannot be had in this world. There are all sorts of things in this world that offer to give it to you, but they never keep their promise. The longings which arise in us when we first fall in love, or first think of some foreign country, or first take up some subject that excites us, are longings which no marriage, no travel, no learning can really satisfy. There is always something that we grasp at in that first moment of longing that just fades away in the reality. The spouse may be a good spouse. The scenery's been excellent. It's turned out to be a good job, but it has evaded us. I wonder whether you feel the pinch of that. We have these kind of longings, but nothing ever quite scratches where we itch. And we search desperately for satisfaction in love and sex, or in academic success, or in keeping fit, or in the picture-perfect family home. And these things can feel nice. We get this temporary endorphin-loaded high, but eventually they fail us, or the spark wears off and we crash, and we realize that we never really found what we were searching for, and so we start looking all over again. Doesn't that just describe life? The never-ending search for it, but it always ends up just being that little bit out of reach. It's where Tom Brady, one of the most famous sports stars on the planet, the quarterback for the New England Patriots, gets to when he says in an interview, "Why do I have 3 Super Bowl rings and still think there's something greater out there for me?" I mean, maybe a lot of people would say, hey man, this is what it's all about. I reached my goal, my dream, my life. Me, I think it's got to be more than this. I mean, this can't be all it's cracked up to be. That's Tom Brady. Now, we don't like facing this reality of an insatiable hunger because it just makes us feel miserable. And so we come up with various strategies to try and mute that noise. So for instance, we kid ourselves that contentment is just around the corner, that it's only a matter of time before we're truly satisfied. We spend our lives waiting in expectation. We think, look, it's all right. I just got to get through this bit of life and then I'll earn some more money, or I'll get married, or I'll have another child, or I'll retire. And lasting contentment we think is coming, but the trouble is, it's a never-ending corner. Or we get a bit older and then we just blame others for stopping our satisfaction, for getting in the way of us being content. You know how that goes. Well, I would be happy if only it wasn't for my boss, or my spouse, or my house, or my health, or the government, or whoever. Or maybe we have some form of a midlife or a quarter life or a late life crisis, and we just constantly reinvent ourselves to try and find the thing that has felt out of reach for so long. And so we buy a new home or a new car, or we get a new wife. But this is just exhausting, and we just kind of end up back where we started. And eventually, maybe, we just despair. Which is where the author Francis Spufford gets to when he writes these wonderful words. He says, the day comes when you're lying in the bath and you notice you're 39 and that the way you're living bears scarcely any resemblance to what you thought you always wanted, and yet you realize you got there by a long series of choices. And so is that it? Just kind of resigning ourselves to this despairing reality of this hunger for something that can never be satisfied. Is that just our lot in life? But what if the search for satisfaction wasn't in vain? I mean, that would be a game changer, wouldn't it? Now, before I take you to the solution, we need to understand the root of the problem. There was a man called Augustine who centuries ago put his finger, I think, on exactly why we are so discontent. And he says it's because our loves are out of order. Now, what does that mean? Well, Augustine was saying, he was a Christian, and he was saying that all of humanity was designed to find satisfaction in relationship with God. That we were made to love God above everything else and find our ultimate contentment in knowing and being known by Him. That is the design plan of all humanity. But the problem is that all of us have turned away from that, and we love other things more than God. And so now we search desperately for satisfaction in other places, in anywhere other than God, in material things or in human relationships or in health and well-being or money, all things which may be good things, but we turn them into God things, into ultimates. We try and make them the place where we can find ultimate satisfaction. But the problem is that they fundamentally won't provide it because it's not what we were made for. There's a verse in the Bible that kind of grabs this idea really clearly. In a book called Jeremiah, God says this. He says, "My people have committed two sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water, and have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water." Can you see the image there? God is saying that there is two fundamental problems that humanity has. People have turned away from him, the spring of living water where satisfaction can be found, and instead they've gone and dug their own cisterns, their own water tanks, but they are useless. They're cracked, they're broken, they can't hold water. It's like drinking from a cool, ever-replenishing freshwater fountain to turning and trying to quench your thirst from the dregs of an old plastic bottle that you found in the bin. Point being, there is no lasting satisfaction to be found there. You may get the odd splash of water that satisfies briefly, but it's not enduring. And so the reason why we're on this constant hunt for a satisfaction that we just can't find a fix for, like Tom Brady in his despair, is because we were made for something better. As author James Smith writes, he says, "The insatiability of my hunger isn't a bug, but a feature. A signal that I long for something infinite. Wanting more isn't the problem. It's where I keep looking for it." And so let me just take you to some words in the Bible, recording something remarkable that Jesus said. Okay, these words were written down by a man called John. He was one of Jesus' good friends. He wrote down this eyewitness account of Jesus' life. And we join it just after Jesus has performed a miracle. He's fed 5,000 people with just this small packed lunch, and it is remarkable, and the crowd are suitably impressed. So much so that the crowd start chasing after Jesus when he leaves because they're hungry for their next free meal. And John writes this. He says, "Once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into the boats and went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. But Jesus knew that they were just after another free meal, and so he says to them," and John writes this, Jesus says, "You're looking for me, not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill." But Jesus wants this crowd to know that he has something so much better to offer them than more bread. And so he says to them this, he says, "Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man," it's just a name for Jesus, "will give you." Can you see what Jesus is saying? That there is a food that spoils. In other words, a food that doesn't last. And there's some sort of food that lasts forever. Okay, most things will satisfy temporarily, but there is something, Jesus hints at, which will provide eternal satisfaction that he can give to people. Now, what is this food that lasts? This thing that Jesus seems to promise will satisfy their deepest longings? Listen to what Jesus says to the crowd. He says, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." Can you see that extraordinary claim? Jesus says that he is the bread of life, that he is the food that provides lasting, eternal satisfaction, that he is what we need more than anything else. Which is what? Well, it's that Jesus came to fix our broken relationship with God, that he came to restore our disordered loves, as we thought about a moment ago. How did he do that? Well, you'll have to read on in John's account, and if you do, you'll discover that the whole mission of Jesus culminated in his death on a cross. And why did Jesus die? That he might bear the punishment for our willful rebellion against God in our place, meaning we can be freely forgiven and restored back to right relationship with the one who made us, knowing, satisfying life as we were made for. And then what are the terms and conditions to access this kind of satisfying life? Did you spot what Jesus says? He says, "Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." That is it. Come to Jesus and believe. There's not a long checklist. There's not a set of rules and regulations. We just have to come to him and believe. And it's for anyone. Whoever comes to him, whatever you've done, however checkered your past might be, whether you're rich or poor or black or white, men, women, young, old, whoever comes to Jesus and believes will find the satisfaction that their soul craves. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't ever feel dissatisfied with this earthly life. Okay, it doesn't mean that Christians are just walking around with a permanent smile glued to their face. We'll still feel longings that can't be fulfilled. We'll still long for friendship or family or financial security or whatever it might be. But those things no longer have to consume us, because in Jesus, our deepest longing will have been met. Now, whatever your preconceptions are of Christianity or Jesus or the church or anything like that, that sort of claim absolutely has to be worth investigating. Because if it's true, it changes everything.